So, what are some of the things I would say one has to consider before doing ethnography? The first one for me is you need to be clear on your question. You can have an overload of information in the field, and you need to know what it is you are interested in. The second one, you need to have social skills to do ethnography. A lot of what happens in the field will depend on social skills. It depends a lot on building relationships, developing and investing in a consistent rapport with people. You need to be accepted by people. Your life might depend on them. People have died doing research. So this social skills building rapport is very critical. Another thing to consider when doing ethnography, while you may be given access, you can also be marginalized and sometimes actively excluded by groups. What will you then do? You need to think about those things. And you need to work and build trust and relationships with boundaries, of course, even before you start doing your ethnography. Be mindful of your own biases. They can flare up during fieldwork. There are different ways in which people do the participation or immersion. It's good to decide ahead whether you will only observe and avoid interactions, or observe and partially participate, or fully participate and observe. There are risks and benefits that come with each of these levels of engagement or participation. All of it will impact on the data you will ultimately get, its reliability and validity. Of course, you can also move between all of these. You can move between full participation, partial participation, full immersion, partial immersion. It takes a lot of time. I know people who took more than 2 years, more than 5 years, so you need to be willing to invest the time that's required. It's also a very expensive exercise, so you have to make sure you have all the resources you will need, rather over budget than under budget. You need to consider questions like isolation, loneliness. Being in the field for a year, you will experience isolation and loneliness. What kind of support structures will you put in place before you go to the field? Being away from what is familiar for a long period of time can be exhausting and sometimes depressing. So these are some of the things that I think are critical to consider before doing ethnography. Things that are critical during fieldwork. When doing the research, for people or the community that has graciously allowed you in their homes, in their lives, this is not the field. Honor that and honor them and respect them in their homes and their communities. There'll be lots of stereotypes that will readily be available for observation in the field. Your job, though, is not to reproduce these stereotypes, but to unpack, to challenge, to go beyond, and offer a more nuanced understanding of the people. Keep notes, lots of field notes. If you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Keep data and analysis, interpretation separate. Just collect when you are doing fieldwork and interpret later. What are some of the challenges that ethnographers encounter? I'll just mention one or two. There are moral dilemmas that one can come across while doing ethnographic research, precisely because you are so involved and invested. In my case, I saw issues of sexual harassment, people getting injured or dying as a result of work underground. What do? Do you report? Do you keep quiet and wait? In such cases, I think the guiding principle should be what is ethical and won't bring harm to the people both now and in the future. And I don't think it's straightforward. One is constantly negotiating these ethical dilemmas and challenges in the field. COVID and ethnography. COVID has clearly presented a lot of challenges for ethnographers. A lot of work has been disrupted. Most institutions, including my own, had a moratorium on all face-to-face field work. There was a national lockdown where we had to social or physically distance. As a result of these, some ethnographers who could, depending on topic and community being studied, moved to online and participated in digital, online, virtual ethnographies. So ethnography that is mediated by computers, or one based on digital communities. Others adopted hybrid methodologies, so not exclusively relied on ethnography or even mainly relied on ethnographies. Others who continued doing ethnographic research as elsewhere have kept a physical distance and observed COVID protocols. Some institutions have drawn up COVID-19 research protocols to assist researchers, but others have not. While others have not, there's a lot of literature online about how you can observe these COVID protocols and still do ethnography. Literature in this new dilemma facing ethnographers is still in its infancy, but there are some scholars and scholarship that is slowly emerging, and I have resources for you at the end of this MOOC. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you found something useful to consider before embarking on ethnography.